Well, hi everyone, and greetings from Northern Michigan. This is Bob the Science Guy. You know, a couple of years ago, this image, the Black Swan image, was just all the rage on the Flat Earth channels, and we still see it to this day. Now, I've addressed this several times before, and so have other debunkers. This is obviously an extremely refracted image, and you can't really tell too much from it. But all those treatments of the Black Swan involved people who actually understand science trying to correct the errors of those that don't. So for the last couple of weeks, what I've done is just basically set something up so that I could put this to rest once and for all. Now, the Flat Earth loves to have very low to the water observations over relatively short distances and then go out and claim it doesn't show any curvature of the Earth. So I decided to introduce the whiteboard and develop a technique to actually measure the refracted radius of the Earth from these very low observation points. Now, I not only did this so that I could better evaluate flat Earth videos, I wanted some measurable evaluation of the refraction present. Now, the spherical shape of the Earth is not subject to debate. It is an established fact. The only thing it is subject to is refinement. So one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to have a talk with a prominent flat earther, and I chose Brandon Toy, probably because he's one of the more reasonable of them. I wanted to see if there was common ground as to whether or not we could agree on what a photograph showed. Specifically, this photograph. This is the famous Black Swan image that has been making the rounds on the flat Earth for the last few years. And all of that was leading up to this video. So, I'm tired of hearing about this flat Earth proof called the Black Swan. It's time to put it to bed. So let's cue up the music and crush the soul of flat Earth. Now, my discussion with Brandon was put out in the form of two videos that were released on Monday and Tuesday of this week. I'll refer you to those videos for a full detail of the discussion. But let's summarize the findings real quick. Now, the Black Swan image is an oil platform off the coast of California called Habitat. This is the photograph that is used to be a quote-unquote globe killer. Now, we're both under agreement that this is 9.41 miles from the observer and that the observer was at an observation height of 1 foot. We identified this deck right here as 57 feet above the water. We identified this deck at 40 feet above the water. We confirmed that the lowest point that we could physically see on this oil rig would be the area of the boat dock and the boat deck and the railing by the boat deck. The top of the railing is at 20.5 feet and the boat deck itself is at 15 feet. We agreed that at a minimum, 15 to 20.5 feet of this oil rig is missing from this photograph. We settled on splitting the difference. Now, while the obvious reason for this is Earth curvature, did try and make the case for compression. Now, compression is an optical effect. It would follow logically that if you are seeing extreme compression, you will see extreme optical effects. So you would probably expect to see the maximum amount of compression from a photograph like this. There are a couple of things that we do have to look at. The area of the flame boom right up here is extremely distorted. So are the upper areas of this oil platform. But if you look down at the bottom, and let me get out of the way here, there's a couple of key features that you can see. You have cross members right here. They're straight. Again, straight. Nothing like this flame boom up here. The other thing that you have here is these decks. Notice that that is a very straight line with a right angle on it. There are very straight lines here. Even this deck has got a nice right angle with relatively minimal distortion. notice that the flame boom comes out and starts off fine and then suddenly looms up. Now, the other thing that's very important to look at in this image is these legs. Notice that the legs are very straight with no more distortion at the top than there is at the bottom. Now, the argument that is being made by the flat earth is that even though these look pretty good, the bottom part of this deck and these legs are nice and straight, and there's no compression visible in this area because these certainly are nice diagonals without a lot of bowing on them, that suddenly, even though we're fine here, we go to massive compression right here, and the bottom 15 to 20 feet must be hidden in that compression. Now, it should be noted that I brought this up with Brandon during the course of the interview, and I was very concerned about these legs down here. Brandon tried to make the case that there was significant distortion on this portion of the leg compared to that portion of the leg. I do believe that looks pretty straight to me. How's it look to you? Now, the question becomes is he saying it's distorted because that's his narrative, and the fact that these are not distorted is rather devastating to that narrative? I would think so, because I think he has trouble seeing this. Those legs are not distorted. There is no indication that we would have essentially no distortion or compression here, and then suddenly go into massive compression just a few inches below it. Now, secondly, the author of the original Black Swan video has been trolling me in my comments on this. Now, he's picking up on the fact that I used a photograph in a previous video that had been misidentified from the source. It was actually platform Hillhouse rather than Habitat. Hillhouse is the next one over. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But rather than concentrate and try and refute my argument that there is 15 to 20 feet of this platform missing, he concentrated on trying to mock me for using the wrong photograph. The problem with the flat earth is mocking is really all they have. Now, I've left the vast majority of them up except ones that were direct personal attacks against me. Now, he's not tried to counter my arguments in any way other than saying, well, he sees the entire platform. There's nothing missing. Even though Brandon and I very clearly demonstrated that there is at a minimum 15 to 20 feet of this platform missing, he's maintaining the party line that there is absolutely none of this platform missing. You can see it all except for things that were compressed for reasons. He hasn't offered any of those reasons, and he hasn't evaluated the photograph. As I noted a few minutes ago, compression is an optical effect. It's a distortion. This is a very distorted photograph. We should expect to see maximum compression in something like this. Now let's have a look at this undistorted photograph taken from approximately the same elevation and location as the first. On the left, you see platform Habitat. Behind my fat head, you see platform Hillhouse. Let's have a look at Habitat very closely. Now I want to call your attention to that deck right there. Sticking out from the side of Habitat below the flame boom, there is a very prominent deck sticking out. Brandon and I looked at that. The bottom of that deck is 40 feet above the water. Now, let's see it on a non-refracted image. Notice anything different? There's the deck right there. That's 40 feet above the water. Where are the rest of the structures below that? Notice, too, that the horizon is very smooth. There's no false horizon behind platform Habitat. Notice, too, that the horizon is clearly between us and platform Habitat. So again, where are all these structures down here? We can see that deck right there, but we can't see any of this. Now here's the bottom line. This is a very refracted photograph. That photograph, not so much. So even though this is a far better and clearer photograph with fewer optical effects and compression, we're missing more of that platform. Why is that? If we are missing platform due to compression, there is less compression here than there is here. Yet, we're missing more of the platform here. That rules out that compression is causing this platform to vanish from the bottom up. It's simply an untenable hypothesis. That's Earth curve. But wait, there's more. We have math. Now, what's normal given the radius of the Earth and standard atmospheric refraction? Once again, let's go to Walter Bislin's Advanced Earth Curve Calculator. We're going to go down here and put in the basic data for the habitat observation. We're on spherical Earth, imperial measurements, 1 foot elevation, 19.41 miles, and the height of the target is 90 feet to the helipad on habitat. How much of that should we see given standard refraction? We should see 54 feet. There should be about 36 feet hidden. Now again, let's look at that image. We should see 36 feet hidden. The platform right here is 40 feet above the surface of the water. And quite frankly, the horizon right here is about 36 feet. So that's the situation under normal refraction. What about here? Again, we have the platform at 40 feet, and we're seeing an extra 20 or 25 feet. Now this area right here is the walkway at the boat ramp. Let's have a look at this and see what kind of refraction we're dealing with. Now I'm going to demonstrate a couple of things here real quick, but first what I want to do is clear up a common misunderstanding that I see on flat earth channels all the time. There is this idea that there is a geometric horizon to the Earth if it is a sphere of radius 3959. And that geometric horizon says that if you are 1 foot off the ground, your horizon is 1.22 miles away. Now what the claim is that if you are observing from 1 foot above the ground, your horizon can be no more than 1.22 miles away. That's wrong. That's a complete misunderstanding of what refraction does to your horizon and what a geometric versus a refracted horizon is. Let me show you. If you have the Earth as a sphere, that will have a geometric horizon, and that geometric horizon, given the size of our Earth, will be 1.22 miles away from an observer height of 1 foot. Now, refraction has the effect of making the Earth larger, increasing the radius, and as a result, it's not 1.22 miles anymore, it's longer. So, in general, the rule is the geometric horizon is not the maximum distance to the horizon, it is the minimum distance to the horizon. The geometric horizon is determined by the radius of the sphere. The refracted horizon is determined by the amount of refraction in the air and tends to have the effect of making it look like a larger sphere. So let's put the calculations, the interview with Brandon, and all of the data into play and see what this tells us. Now, whenever you try to solve a problem in applied mathematics, the first thing you have to do is say, what are your givens? So let's look at our givens for the Black Swan image. Here we go. Given number 1, the observer height is 0 feet because that's the way our formula works. Number 2, the Earth is a sphere and it has an unknown radius of r. Number 3, now the unknown radius can be determined mathematically by saying distance squared to the platform minus the hidden height squared over 2 times the hidden height is our radius. And finally, number 4, a flat surface is the same thing as a sphere of radius infinity. So basically, if the Earth is flat, when we calculate the radius, it will come back at infinity. If the radius comes back as anything other than infinity, it's not flat. So let's go ahead and do the math. We had 2 estimates of the hidden height. Brandon was favoring 15 feet hidden. I was favoring 20 feet hidden. So if it's 15 feet, the radius of the Earth is 15,584 miles. If it's 20 feet, the radius is 11,688 miles. Now, the average of those is 13,360 miles. Now we'll use those in just a second, but I do want to point out one thing right now. First of all, it's not infinity. The Earth is not flat. The Black Swan conclusively demonstrates that as distorted as that photograph is, and as of limited use as it is, it conclusively demonstrates that the Earth is not flat. Now, before we go to the calculations, let's look at one thing that you see in the Flat Earth a lot, and that is Quantum Eraser and company claiming that the Black Swan says the radius of the Earth is 260,000 miles. Now, this demonstrates two very basic misunderstandings of the flat Earth. Number one, the orbit of the moon is about 240,000 miles away. The radius of the Earth, by definition, cannot be larger than the orbit of the moon, or else the moon would be orbiting within the Earth. This is an impossible number. That should be your first clue that you did something wrong. Now, the way that they got this number was actually rather simple. They took the 1 foot observation and they estimated that the horizon was some 10 miles plus away. They used 10 miles. They came up with 268,000 miles. Now, where did they get the horizon being 10 miles away? Let's have a look. Now, here's where their confusion comes in. Here is the Black Swan image, which was colorized by QE to bring out the contrast. Now, notice that you have water right here. Then the water changes color suddenly between here and here. Then the water changes color again, going to this light blue up to about here. And then it changes color again and comes up to here. So where exactly is the horizon here? Now, we're going to answer that conclusively here in a few minutes. But because they are seeing what appears to be an horizon beyond the platform, they seem to think that that concludes that the horizon is at least 10 miles away, and at a 1 foot observation, that would come back to a radius of the Earth of 268,000 miles. There's a couple of problems with that. First of all, if the horizon was indeed behind the platform, nothing would be missing on the platform. There is 15 to 20 feet of that platform missing. By definition, that means the horizon is between the observer and the platform. It's not beyond it. So what is this out here? This is a fata bromosia. It's also called fairy fog. This is a very well-described optical phenomenon caused by refraction. And as a matter of fact, if you looked at my Titanic video, it figures very prominently in that video. So if you want a better explanation of what the fata bromosia or fairy fog is, go have a look at that video. And make sure you hit a like and subscribe while you're there. So anytime you hear the claim that the Black Swan means that the Earth's radius is 268,000 miles or some nonsense like that, that's how it happened. That's the mistake they made. And it occurred because they made assumptions they couldn't make. Specifically that the horizon was past the oil rig. It is not. Let's find out where it really is. Now, I promised you some math, so let's go back to our old friend, Walter Bisslin's Advanced Earth Curve Calculator. And we'll put in the data for habitat. Now, recall from the problem, our observer height is 0 feet. Now, we can't put a 0 in here, but as you can see, that's quite a small number. We have standard refraction. Our distance to the target is 9.41 miles, and the target size is 90 feet. Now, recall, the reason that we're putting in 0 refraction is that we calculated the effective radius based on our measurements. And it says here that with a 13,000 mile radius, which is midway between 15 and 12, we should have 17.5 feet missing. So everything works out, except there's a problem, and that is that the photograph was not taken from 0 feet elevation. It was taken from 1 foot elevation. So we're going to change that. And let's go back down here. And lo and behold, we should only have 10.5 feet missing. What's the problem there? So what we need to do is we actually need to revise the radius of the Earth to match what we saw in reality. And the way that we're going to do that, so we're going to go down here, and instead of having 13,000 miles, we're going to put in 9,000 miles. And that gives us a hidden height of 16.78 feet. Okay, so now we've matched the observation. So we got a very good idea of what was going on, and now we match the observation based on a change from the given, and that is the observer height from 0 feet to 1 foot. So disregarding all the distortion and everything, if the Earth had a radius of 9,000 miles and we took a photograph of habitat from 1 foot elevation, that's how much of the platform we would see. That matches our observations. So let's go back here and have a look at another thing. How far away is the horizon? Well, there it is right there, 1.85 miles. So, if the Earth had a radius of 9,000 miles and we're at 1 foot of elevation, the horizon would be 1.85 miles away, and we would see approximately 17.5 feet of that platform missing. So far, we're right on the money. Now, we can take this and leave it exactly as it is, except we can go ahead and have a look at platform Hillhouse. Now, 1 foot elevation, not changing the refraction, not changing anything else. We're going to change the target distance from 9.41 miles to 6.21, which is how far it is to Hillhouse. Hillhouse has also got a helipad at 90 feet. Now, let's go down and see what we have. And according to this, we should have approximately 5.5 feet of platform Hillhouse missing. Let's go see what we actually see. Now we can do something kind of cool with the image. First of all, here is the image of platform Hillhouse from the Black Swan photo. One of the things that Brandon and I did when we looked at the Black Swan image was we also looked at Hillhouse. Now we couldn't really agree as to whether or not any of this platform is missing. However, that's because I didn't push the issue. Now I'm going to push the issue. Here is the boat deck, which is 15 feet above the surface of the water. This deck right here is 40 feet above the surface of the water. The difference between the two is 25 feet. Now, if I take this image and cut a little piece of it out, like so, I have a nice measurement of 25 feet. Let's go ahead and bring that down to right here. Now, if you line the top of this section up with that catwalk, it is 25 feet from the catwalk down to here. That means that halfway would be 12.5 feet, and halfway would be about right there. Now, if the horizon was where my cursor was, I'd only have 2.5 feet missing. However, as you can tell, the horizon is above my cursor. So that 5.5 feet that is predicted based on a 9,000 mile diameter of the sphere, that's looking pretty darn close. I think that 5.5 feet missing is a very reasonable estimate based on this. The idea that this is caused by compression is simply dismissed as untenable. The idea that there's no platform missing on Hillhouse is also dismissed because we just demonstrated it. The amount of refraction that occurred at the time of this photograph corresponded to a radius of the Earth of 9,000 miles, not 268,000 miles. And it not only works for habitat, it also works for platform Hillhouse. Not only is this not a globe Earth killer, it absolutely rules out the possibility of a flat Earth being demonstrated with this photograph. So even though it's extremely blurry, both Hillhouse and habitat demonstrate a spherical Earth. Now, the refraction radius of that Earth is 9,000 miles, and the actual radius of the Earth, of course, is 3,959 miles. The best thing that could be said about this Black Swan image is that it's a spherical Earth and the radius is in question. It may be larger than we were taught by them. So to be honest with you, I don't expect to hear any more of the Black Swan. I hope other debunkers see this proof and just basically shut it down. because it's time it got shut down. So this is Bob the Science Guy signing out from Northern Michigan. Thank you again for stopping by. I really do appreciate your support of this channel. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe down there and check out my videos. Take care, guys.
Mama, please make them hear me, or I can't teach them anymore. This rabbit hole's too deep for me. Feel my brain getting real sore.